Hey there everybody, Brett from Love Bets and the Belfry back for my part 3 video of my movie collection. At the end of part 2 I finished out with the H's. Like with part 1 I forgot like a couple movies in that, but with this I forgot one movie which was under the H's, which I just need to know when I'm stopping. But we're basically going from I's to however long I can go until I can stop. For those who don't know, I just had back surgery pretty recently. I'm actually wearing a back brace right now, and I do need to be up on my feet, like basically every hour. So I'm kind of using it as an excuse to kind of be up on my feet and make a video. But like I said in my previous videos, if I could have made this, I don't have a super extensive movie collection, so I could have made it in one video, but if I did, I tend to ramble about a lot of movies, so it almost would have been like a 4 or 5 hour video. So that's why I'm breaking it up into parts. But let's get started. This is the one I forgot to say at the end of the last video, but I put it under H's under a horror collection, but it's an 8 movie pack. And the reason I bought this was because of the movie Chopping Mall right here. It's a total B movie. It's pretty terrible, but I enjoy that movie. I don't know why they call it Chopping Mall. I mean, it's a clever name, but it's about these robots that go like on a rampage and like kill all these teenagers in the mall. So it's not like it would have made more sense if it like the villain was like, a Jason, Michael Myers type, because he's like chopping people up. So, but it's not. It's just these like killer robots. But it's still a fun movie regardless. I have watched Waxworks here. That's pretty fun too. That's all about a wax museum. Slaughter High is also pretty funny. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. The thing I remember most from Slaughter High is the guy who did the scores to the Friday the 13th movies. He did the score to Slaughter High, and I don't think I can find it really anywhere online, especially like streaming platforms. But the score to Slaughter High is like one of the funniest sounding scores I've ever heard in a movie. But the rest of the movie is just kind of whatever. It's fine. It just, if you like B movie stuff, you might like it. But yeah, so I bought this, horror collection pack. So moving on to the I's, I had the I Know What You Did Last Summer collection, and I've only seen the first 2 of these. My sister was really into early 2000s horror when I was growing up, so I was exposed to some of that as well. She watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer pretty regularly. But there's I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, which is the 3rd movie. Never seen it, never really heard much about it. I'm guessing it was probably like a straight to DVD thing, because I don't remember that ever coming out in like the movie theater ever. So, but yeah, got that. Incubus Alive at Red Rocks. This is my wife's. She's a pretty big Incubus fan. I grew up on liking a lot of Incubus as well, like, kind of Morning View and Make Yourself era. I like those albums a lot. Some of their later stuff, like after I think it was their album Light Grenades, I kind of fell off with them, and same with my wife. It's kind of like their earlier stuff. I don't like their really, really early stuff. That was when they were trying to just be like this, like funky new metal band. I can't do it. Like I couldn't do that. But like, yeah, Make Yourself and Morning View I thought were great albums. The Indian in the Cupboard, this is also my wife's. I started watching this with her, and she really likes this movie a lot. I think I was like 10, 20 minutes in, and we kind of started at a very inconvenient time, so we had to turn it off. I don't remember why, but I will get around to seeing this eventually. Inside, not for the faint of heart whatsoever. This is definitely one of those very disturbing movies. I actually would count this as a Christmas movie because it is a home invasion movie, but it does take place, I think, on Christmas Eve or possibly Christmas Day. But it's about a pregnant woman as well, so quite, putting all those, together, it sounds like you're in for a very extreme time. So I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but if you can handle it, it is a good movie. I will say that. Insomnia. I think this is one of Christopher Nolan's like first movies, but I know Robin Williams plays like the villain in this. I've never gotten around to seeing it. People say it's pretty good, more of the underrated type Christopher Nolan movie. But yeah, my wife has a copy. She bought a lot of stuff from like Blockbuster. I think when it was at least the one that we had was like going out of business or something. The Interpreter, another one from Blockbuster. Never seen this. Never really heard much about it. Just looks like a thriller. I don't know. Not really my type of thing. It doesn't really look like my type of movie, so, but we have it. Invaders from Mars. I still have not got around to seeing this, but it looks really goofy and really schlocky, so I will get around to seeing it eventually. But yeah, it just looks like fun. It looks, yeah. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. The Invisible Man. Yeah, one of the Universal monster type movies. I actually would say this is not a bad movie whatsoever, but among like Dracula, Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Wolf Man, I would say this is probably my least favorite out of all of them. But it's still not a bad movie, and honestly, the remake that came out in 2020, like right before the shutdown happened, I actually do like a good bit of that movie as well. I think it has a lot of flaws, but it's not a bad remake by any means, and it is quite different from this one. So, I mean, you know, you can like both for different reasons. The Iron Claw, this is pretty new. I did a Blu ray review of it on this channel if you want to check that out, but I would say The Wrestler is probably one of the best wrestling movies ever made. This is honestly probably a close second. This movie will pretty much tear your heart out. Like, if you have any sort of emotion, like, it's hard not to be affected by this movie. And, you know, this was based on the story of the Von Erichs, which was a wrestling family that were really big in Texas during, you know, the 80s and everything. They had their own, like, wrestling league and everything. And you know, Zac Efron, who plays Kevin Von Erich, he's the last surviving member of the Von Erich brothers. And yeah, it's like if the fact that this movie had to cut out another one of the brothers, like due to the narrative and the fact that it's like there was another brother who also died, it's like that's telling you how tragic this story is. But really, really well done movie. And Kevin Von Erich was actually kind of like a consultant on this movie. The only thing he wanted the director to capture on this was the love that the brothers have for one another, and I think they definitely did a good job on that. It on 4K Blu-ray. I bought this just because it came with the regular Blu-ray. Very flawed. I would still say this is pretty flawed. I like the 1990 TV movie version of it with Tim Curry as Pennywise. Very flawed in that as well, but this is still pretty enjoyable. Chapter 2 I thought was, now thinking back in retrospect, my wife and I actually did a review of Chapter 2 on the channel a number of years ago. I think Chapter 2 was a giant misfire, but like the first one, I thought was really, really good. It's like, I don't condone remaking movies, but like, I can completely understand if they try to remake this again, because it's really hard, I think, with a story like this to really like hit the nail on the head. When you have the Stephen King story that like kind of flip-flops back and forth between them as kids and as adults. And it's like, in the 1990 version of the TV movie, they had, you know, the first part was them as kids, the second part as adults, and they did the same thing with this, the 2017 It, and then It Chapter 2, they did that same exact thing. So, I don't know. They like I don't blame them if they end up remaking this once again. But the 2017 hit, I still think is a pretty enjoyable movie, honestly. It Comes at Night. This is definitely this is one that has some sentimental value to it. This came out in 2017, and my wife and I, when we first started dating, this was actually the first movie we saw together on our first date. Little inside info. We were supposed to go to an outdoor showing of E.T. for our first date. We were supposed to go to dinner, and then in the area where we were having dinner, there was supposed to be an outdoor showing of E.T. And I didn't hear of any cancellation like online about it, but we showed up where it was supposed to happen, and we just sat there, and then we're like, yeah, I don't think they're showing E.T. tonight. I think because there was just a slight chance of like rain. And so my wife and I, first date, we were just like sitting where ET was supposed to happen. We were just talking for a really long time. And then we were like, we could go see a late night movie. So we went and saw It Comes at Night, like pretty much close to midnight. And so I bought this. While some people aren't crazy about this movie, I do like this movie. I just don't think it has a lot of replay value, but I do own it because of just the story behind it. And yeah, it links to me emotionally, and my wife emotionally, because this was like our first date movie, so that's why I have it. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty interesting movie, and I haven't watched it in quite a while, but maybe I'll watch it, sometime soon. It Follows, still great movie. I think it holds up pretty well. I think, when you get into the semantics or the nitpicking of the movie, like the whole pool scene, like the climax of the movie, really didn't feel like necessary, but in a way, it's like, I feel like it was necessary. You kind of needed like a really big moment in this movie to happen, and the pool scene kind of was that like final like confrontation with the entity and stuff like that. So I think that's why it works. But the critic in me is kind of saying like, why would they bother trying to like take this thing down, because there's no way to like really get rid of it. But I still really enjoy this movie. I think it's definitely a horror classic at this point. I think this came out like 2014 or something. So yeah, I think this is a classic horror movie at this point. And I think there's supposed to finally be a sequel. I'm not really sure what they would do with it, or how would they be like inventive with it. You can only just hope the sequel's pretty good. Jennifer's Body. We'll get into the J's now. I don't like this movie really at all. I had a lot of friends and acquaintances, like when this movie came out, and even years later, like people like saying how much they love this movie and everything. It's funny because it's like, I know Diablo Cody wrote this movie. I could be wrong on that. At least my recollection, Diablo Cody wrote this movie, and then Diablo Cody went to write, Lisa Frankenstein. And I really liked Lisa Frankenstein that came out this year. I wasn't fond of Jennifer's Body though, and I don't know, it just reminds me of like the emo phase that like I went through, in high school, and like, just this like crappy emo band that plays this really terrible song throughout this entire movie. I don't know. Maybe it's just because, at the time this came out, I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was okay. But like I rewatched this like a couple of years ago with Kelly, and she was like, I don't get the hype behind this movie. Honestly, I don't either. But we own it. So, but I don't know, maybe because it's just like, I'm just getting older now, that it's like, it's just not my thing anymore. So I'm just going to chalk it up to that. It's just not my thing. Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2. 1 is, I would say, is a horror classic with all its flaws and everything. It definitely is still a very engaging watch. Jeepers Creepers 2, I know it just has to do with like a school bus and such, and I think I watched it once and just didn't really care for it. Jeepers Creepers 3, and I think there's one called Reborn that came out. I just didn't bother with because all I heard was just negative things about it. But you know, the first one is a classic, so I have it. John Wick, still a great standalone action movie if you don't watch the sequels. I mean, even the way that they wrap up this first movie, it doesn't really say that it's like, oh, it's clearly going to have a sequel. But if you just watch the first one, great action movie. Honestly, most of the John Wicks are pretty great. I don't care for Chapter 2 all that much. I don't know. It's one of those movies where I think it was like slightly over 2 hours long, and Chapter 2, it just, you get action fatigue. At least for me, I got action fatigue like 2/3 of the way through the movie, and I'm like, I gotta do with, there's even more action scenes, and it's like, I was pretty checked out by that point when watching Chapter 2. Chapter 3, I thought was a good, like, I thought Chapter 3 kind of redeemed itself a little bit, and Chapter three's ending had an awesome ending and got you really pumped for a new one. And then, so they released Chapter 4, and I just watched Chapter 4 recently, and it's funny because that is the longest one of the whole franchise, and that's like nearly a 3-hour movie. And it's hilarious because I did not feel action fatigue from Chapter 4. And Chapter 4 was way longer than Chapter 2. But yeah, John Wick Chapter 4 I thought was a great way to kind of conclude the series. And I know there's kind of like these rumors that they're going to make a Chapter 5. And I'm like, you don't need to. You know, John Wick's story kind of came to a close. And I mean, you could do like a spin-off with like one of the characters in Chapter 4. He's like kind of a pretty central character, and you could do a spin-off with him, but I don't really think it's necessary. I thought Chapter 4 was a good way to conclude the whole series. But yeah, I like the first one. I like Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Chapter 2 is kind of just whatever. I know there's definitely fans of Chapter 2 out there, but I would say the best scene out of Chapter 2 was the gun shopping scene with the guy recommending all those guns to John. I was like, it's a really odd scene how like cool and calming it is. I like rewatch that scene from time to time, and I'm just like, this is the best part of the movie, and it has nothing to do with John being in action and shooting people. Like, it's just him going shopping. He goes to the library and he gets a new suit. And why do I like that scene? I don't know, I just do. Just Friends. This is a pretty flawed movie, but I mean, I have seen this movie a good amount of times. It is pretty funny. A lot of people can definitely relate to this movie, especially a lot of younger people. Someone who's in love with like their best friend, or you know, they have like a best friend who they see as more than just a friend, but then that person only sees a friend out of them. So it is definitely a Christmas movie. It takes place all during Christmas time, and Ryan Reynolds' character was like, he was like really fat and chubby in high school, and then he leaves. Basically everyone shames him at this party, and then like 10 years later he comes back home for the holiday season, and he runs into his old friend, and they like try to catch up on life and everything, and he basically like retorts to how he was in high school, and he's not like this big hot shot that he is now. So it's a fun movie, but it's your pretty typical comedy type movie at this point. Moving on to the K's, Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is one of Kelly's favorite movies. It was cool last year for Kelly's birthday. My brother-in-law, like, we had a little party for Kelly and get together, but my brother-in-law brought his like outdoor screen, and like he brought his projector, and we watched Killer Clowns outside, and it was a lot of fun. It was funny too because my nieces were there watching this, and It was funny. Like I didn't think any of them were gonna like it because this movie is very out there, and it seemed like everyone was really enjoying it. So that's a good memory to have linked to this movie. But this movie's just a blast, anyways. And Kelly and I went. I think actually our first video on the channel, we went to see the 2017 It and this as a double feature, and it was a lot of fun. Kingdom of Heaven. I have not seen just the regular cut of this movie. This I bought because it is the director's cut. The director's cut is like 3 hours. This is definitely one of the more underrated Ridley Scott movies. I think, yeah, just because of like studio interference and just trying to keep this relatively at like a 2 hour cut. I think that's why it kind of bombed. But if you watch the 3 hour director's cut, I mean, it's a really good epic tale. I mean, if you like fantasy type stuff, I mean, this is definitely a good one to check out. But yeah, I kind of want to rewatch this. Krampus. I watch this movie every year around Christmas time. I love this movie. This movie, I think, also is heavily flawed. Like the humor sometimes doesn't always hit, but like the practical effects of like Krampus's creatures just look super awesome. It reminds me of Gremlins a lot, and yeah, I love that. Like the ending isn't afraid to be like it has this like false happy ending, and I love that about this movie. It wasn't just this like sentimental like type thing. It was just like, oh, like you're starting to appreciate your family a lot because Krampus literally came for you and like practically killed your whole family. So yeah, I love this movie. It's a lot of fun though. If you're a horror fan and you haven't seen this, definitely check it out. This is the one with Adam Scott and Toni Collette in it. There are like these Krampus like knockoff like really low budget movies. You can tell the difference between this cover and those covers, so just yeah, make sure you get the one with Adam Scott and Toni Collette in it. This is the remake of Last House on the Left. I saw this a long time ago. I don't really care to see it again. I know there's like an essay scene, you know, that's like really extensive in this movie. And that is the case in the original Wes Craven film, and even Wes Craven's original Last House on the Left is a pretty shocking film, like even by today's standards. So like I could only imagine how it felt watching it like back then when it came out. But yeah, this is a heavy watch, and at least yeah, I mostly remember Wes Craven's original and not this one. But I was gonna say both are fairly shocking. So if you're not up for that, definitely avoid this. I don't think either one of those, the original or the remake, is very much a fun watch. Like it's pretty heavy. So yeah, if you're not ready for it, don't watch it. Legend. This is with Tom Cruise. I bought this when I worked for FYE, and I've mentioned that many times in past videos. Like when I worked for FYE, I bought movies all the time, and I bought this version just because it looked really cool. But it was like kind of clear, and it opens up. Oh, something fell. Whoops. But yeah, like a fantasy movie basically with Tom Cruise. A lot of people, it's kind of like one of those cult movies. Like those who have seen it really love it. I still have yet to watch it though. I bought this just because it's like Legends of Horror. It's just your classic Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, I think. Is he on that? No, it's Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Vincent Price. It's just a bunch of random movies with them in it. It is kind of falling apart, like as you can see, but I bought it just for the aesthetic of it. Yeah, I honestly don't know if I'll get around to watching any of these. I have three of these next ones, but I will show off Let Me In, which is the American version of Let the Right One In, and I have those. I had this on DVD, but I think this is a gorgeous looking film, so I ended up buying it on Blu-ray, and it looks gorgeous on Blu-ray. Between the both, I will be honest, the American version of Let Me In isn't that bad. I just think they go over the top with a lot of stuff in this version, and while, the foreign version, Let the Right One In, this, there is a lot of horror in this movie, but it is a weirdly calming movie for a lot of it, and it is a slow burn. And I think when they made the American version, they were kind of probably thinking like, all right, we need to ramp up certain scenes that were horrific and such. And I think that's where the movie kind of loses me a little bit. Also, the lighting of this movie is quite odd. It kind of looks just more real. Like, it just looks like a straightforward shot movie. It just happens to be about a girl vampire. And this, it's just like, everything just seems so dark and like somber and like kind of otherworldly. With this, it just feels like you are watching just people live in this like town. But this is a great winter watch. I always recommend people watch this around wintertime. Snowfall throughout the whole movie, and the book is also really good. And it's funny because it's like, this is one of those movies where I love the movie so much I ended up buying the book, and the book does have a lot more extensive stuff than the movie, and love the story so much that I bought the sequel. The author of this story, he made a sequel, but it was just in a short story version called Let the Old Dreams Die, and I love that short story. I honestly I kind of consider it like an epilogue to the story of Let the Right One In, because it's kind of told from the perspective of some other person, and Ellie and Oscar are like only briefly mentioned in the sequel story, but it's told really, really well, and it's like, and from the perspective of somebody else, like, is like telling their story, it somehow works. It's really engaging, and I love this Let the Old Dreams Die. It's a great follow-up to this. But yeah, definitely check out Let the Right One In if you haven't. The Lighthouse. Really, really great movie. I still love this movie. It's definitely not one I want to put on all the time. Like The Witch, Robert Eggers, who did this, The Witch, he did The Northman, which I also really like. Yeah, this is still a great movie. Great black and white film. I think The Witch is probably the most accessible of the three, and I am stoked about his Nosferatu remake coming out. It looks amazing. There's definitely some hype for that coming out on Christmas Day this year. But yeah, I still, when Kelly and I went and saw this in the movie theater, we loved it. It was a great movie going experience, and Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson just put on, like, this movie is weirdly hilarious in a lot of moments. Like, it's not trying too hard to make you laugh, but there's just some moments where it's played so straight, but it's just so ridiculous in its delivery that you can't help but laugh at it. Just especially just the part where Robert Pattinson is just like, "I'm sick of your farts," and just saying that, and like, he says Robert Pattinson, like, kind of insults Willem Dafoe's like cooking. He's like, "You're fond of me lobster." Like, it's just really funny. Lilo and Stitch. I like this movie. My wife is more really into this movie, and this is her copy. She loves Stitch just as a character, and can't really blame her for that. It's been quite a while since I've watched this, but I do really remember enjoying it. But yeah. Lion King. Classic movie. Don't really know what else to say. I mean, it's just a good movie, and it's a good thing we own this on DVD, because Disney loves to do this thing where they like release physical copies and then don't repress them for like 20 years. And so it's like if you have a copy of, one of their Disney movies, it's kind of a good thing. Because, I mean, granted, you can just stream it on Disney Plus, but I remember when I worked for FYE, people would come in and buy Disney movies. It was like anytime they repressed them and they released them, it was like $34, $35 for like a copy of The Nightmare Before Christmas or something. It was like ridiculous. The Living Dead Girl, I have not seen this, but definitely looks very much like a vampire tale. But yeah. Lords of Salem. I've mentioned on this channel that I'm really only a fan of Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. I don't really care for his other movies. Honestly, this one's not too bad. I like it for just the mere reason that it has made me laugh out unintentionally at a couple moments in the movie. And yeah, it's quite an odd movie. I do like the radio DJ aspect, which is more towards the beginning of this movie, which Sherry Moon Zombie plays like this radio DJ and has like this talk show on the radio. And most of this takes place in Salem, which is cool. But yeah, it's not a great movie, but like if someone was like, hey, I'm going to put on Lords of Salem, I wouldn't exactly complain about it. And we have classic. I mean, there's so much you could say about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. One day I will get around to reading the entire Lord of the Rings book, but I don't see this movie, a movie like this, ever, or a trilogy of movies being made ever again. This captured such an amazing time, like in Hollywood and cinema, that it's like they filmed this entire trilogy like back to back to back, and it's such an achievement. Like, yeah, I know a lot of people agree with me on that. It's just, yeah, like it can't be overstated how good this trilogy of films are, and it's fascinating. I love just going back and seeing behind the scenes stuff and old interviews of the cast and stuff like that. And even in 2020, they did like a reunion, like through like pretty much through like video chat and FaceTime, and it was really cool because it was like almost like no time had passed. Like everyone was like just so cool with one another and everything. And yeah, it was fascinating. And yeah, I mean the Hobbit like trilogy was hoping to be at this level, but when this was made, it was like, man, like good luck making something as good as this. I mean, I love this film series so much, and yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien, his writing and everything is like, I'm fascinated of delving into like his stories and everything and reading all of Lord of the Rings. I mean, most people say the biggest difference is the movie was focused a lot on action more than, the story. I think it's really well done, but a lot of people say the books or the big book of Lord of the Rings is like, if it's like 50-50 on like action and dialogue, the book is like 90% dialogue, 10% action, and that's not exactly a bad thing. But yeah, love the movies. So I only covered a couple letters, but my back is starting to hurt a good bit, so I'm going to call it a day on part 3 of my movie collection video. If you've enjoyed it, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of different stuff. I tend to kind of keep in the vein of like horror and spooky stuff, but I have a lot of different interests. I like wrestling a lot. I love different types of movies. Even some of my favorite movies aren't of the horror genre, but I do try to focus on horror more than anything. And absolutely ring that bell. If you follow this channel and you don't get notifications of a new video, definitely hit that bell, because I feel like not a lot of people notice when I upload a new video. So definitely hit that bell. But I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed my part 3 video, and I will see you in a future video. Bye.